Welcome to Hashtag Gen Z. I'm your host, Megan Grace. Welcome back. This is episode 21 of Hashtag Gen Z. We're talking about one of my all-time favorite things to chat about, music. There's no doubt that music has changed significantly, even in just the last 15 to 20 years. As a proud millennial, I remember picking out my favorite CDs to take on road trips so I could listen to them on my Walkman. I remember the pride of buying my first iPod, but now we have the option to stream and download and listen to music on demand. So what is the music experience like for young people today? What are the trends in music? And what artists are young people listening to? Only a member of Generation Z could answer the world-famous question, what is cool with the kids these days? Karli Farrell is a junior at Indiana University studying business and French horn performance. She's passionate about music, both as an artist and a consumer. While she studies classical music for school, obviously, her music tastes are very diverse. I had the opportunity to meet Karli when I was speaking at IU earlier this fall and knew from the minute I met her that I had to spend some more time chatting with her, especially about music, so she could fill us in on music and Generation Z. So I want to welcome my new friend, Karli Farrell, to the podcast. I got to meet Karli. Actually, we're playing role reversal right now because Karli actually interviewed me first. I was speaking at IU last month, and she was a member of Gen Z that got kind of roped into interviewing me for a series that they do to help some of their faculty members and instructors and administrators on campus. So really, she interviewed me first, and now I'm just following in her footsteps. But I got to know Karli a little bit and learn a little bit more about her experience, and she is here to talk to us about Gen Z and music. But I'm going to turn it over to Karli, say hello, and have her share a little bit about her story. So Karli, welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karli Farrell. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm currently a junior at Indiana University studying French horn performance and business. So with that, I'm hoping to go into the orchestral management career field and explore the more business side of the music industry.
So Karli, you are the quintessential, I always used to talk about this nebulous student that wanted to do, has a creative side, but also wants to learn business and is doing both. I always say, how do students that are dancers and are going to do things in the dance school, but then also want to know, how do I manage a dance studio? I need to take entrepreneurship classes, or I need to take business classes. You are here. You are my real life example. Welcome. So what inspired your interest in music, and really how did you get to this point of deciding, this is the journey I'm going to take in my career and how I'm going to study in college?
Sure. I always loved music and entertaining from such a young age. I was always that kid at family functions, at weddings, what have you, that was entertaining everyone. I fed off of the positive energy there. I loved to make people smile and to make people feel things. So that was me as a young one. And then when I was 10, I started playing the trumpet. So that was my first musical instrument. And I played that for a few years, just in school band and jazz band. And then when I got to high school, my freshman year, I switched to the French horn. And it's been such an important facet of my life. Ever since making that switch, I fell in love with music at a much deeper level. After switching to the French horn, it's a gorgeous instrument. It's really difficult, and I just fell in love with performing after that. And yeah, I was a member of the Cincinnati Symphony Youth Orchestra for 3 years, and I began taking private lessons. And obviously now I'm here at one of the top tier public music schools in the U.S. and I love performing. It's definitely changed my life for the better. It takes a lot of work to be a musician, and I think it has helped me in other aspects of my life, having always a goal to work towards as a musician. You're never bored if you play a musical instrument.
Yeah, there's always something to learn, whether it's a new song or a new skill or something. Just curiosity, because I come from a musical family. My mom's side of the family all played piano and multiple instruments, and I'm the black sheep. I was that was fun. I'm going to go outside and play a sport. did you come from a musical family, or was this just something you found on your own? Because I'm always curious about how musicians kind of get their start and find their inspiration, because truly, like, some people start at such a young age, and I'm always interested in that inspiration.
I am the only musician in my family, but we all appreciate music so much. I grew up listening to recordings of the Ohio State University marching band. My dad went to OSU for his undergrad, and he always loved listening to the marching band. That was one of his highlights when he went to football games. And he was really my inspiration, just listening to those recordings as a child. I loved the trumpet. I think that's why I chose it as my first instrument. So I'm the only one that performs in my family, but we all love music. We're all listening to music, different genres, very appreciative of the music industry, especially with what I'm doing now. I've had the opportunity to teach my parents a lot about the music industry just from the different internships I've had. And being here at the Jacobs School of Music, they have the opportunity to come up here and see all of the different performances that we have here. And so I do come from a musical family in a sense. They're just not performers of music.
That makes me feel better. I now have the language to go back to my family and be like, I'm not a performer, but I am a music appreciator, and I fit in this musical family. So thank you for that. Much
You're
appreciated.
welcome.
So let's kind of start talking. Thanks. Making me feel better. Sometimes I get validated by this podcast. So let's start talking about this overlay of, you're a musician, you're a trained musician, you're going to go into this career, and but at the same time, you're a member of Generation Z. And like I said, you're kind of this perfect example of how I've always said that there's this creative side to Gen Z, but they also want this academic training in other fields and merging all that together. And I think that you're going to be able to give us a great perspective on this. And so, me, I'm a little bit of I apply a little bit of a historical lens to a lot of the things that I do, because I like to look at the evolution of society and how that's kind of influenced how humans behave through it. And I am, as I said, a musical appreciator. And so when I've been doing my research on how things have evolved, I've looked at how different generations have interacted with music. And I think that the general society is able to do that. So each generation's kind of had their era of music that was unique to their cohort. If you could describe Generation Z, what is unique to Generation Z's cohort when it comes to music?
Yeah, I would say that hip hop is probably the most prominent genre for Generation Z, just because there are so many types of hip hop. A few of the artists that come to mind are like Travis Scott, Drake, even Ed Sheeran, Ariana Grande. They're very relatable, and their music is really interesting, and it's just fun. It's good, like party music, and just something that we can all get on board with. We understand the lyrics really well. Another one is Lizzo. She has been a more recent artist that has come onto the scene, and she's all about body positivity. And with that, she's very relatable. But within the hip hop genre and even with the electronic genre, they're just very relatable and interesting and fun. And I think that's why Generation Z appreciates the hip hop genre so much, because there's a lot of variety within it. But yeah, I think hip hop is definitely the top genre that comes to mind.
So that's so interesting, because hip hop, I mean, didn't get its roots with Gen Z, but I think it's definitely had a unique evolution. And I think you brought up this interesting point of the relatability of them, like what they're saying in their songs. And the sound is in some ways different, because I mean, I was listening to Ed Sheeran when he first came out. God, what would have been 2014? And he was just like a ginger with a guitar. And now he's merging and collaborating with these people that if you would have said like Ed Sheeran's going to be, working with some hip hop artists, I'm like, what? Okay. If you would have told me that then. And I think that he's done a good job of genre crossing, if you will, of like hopping into new places, and really, but his message stays the same. And you could apply the same lens to Lizzo. Big fan of the Spiritual Church of Lizzo. And really, her message is what captures people, and she introduces them into a new genre that they might not have listened to before. Lizzo's for all the people, like everybody. But would you say that there's this element for Generation Z of the kind of what is being said in the song is more important than necessarily the sound of the song.
Yeah, I think that the tempo, the sort of beat is it's pretty across the board for hip hop. I mean, you obviously have your R&B that's more relaxed, and then you have your upbeat, your like hardcore rap, like gangster rap. Run the Jewels, that's very heavy, hardcore rap. There's always a different sort of niche genre of hip hop, that you can listen to whatever mood you're in. But I do think that the lyrics, especially just with the political climate, the social climate that we are certainly within right now in the US, the lyrics are really important to us. And also the artists themselves, what they stand for. With social media, we have the opportunity to see what they're doing in their personal lives. They have the ability to influence us, and that's certainly what makes these artists popular and this music popular is they're really relatable. We know what they're doing pretty much consistently. They're all really relevant with social media, and they're all definitely social media influencers as well as musicians. And yeah, I think that especially with how prominent social media is in our generation, we like to see what they're doing, outside of the studio.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point that we have to bring into social media as as an aspect of being a music consumer now too. Of you're not just like, I'm going to listen to said artist and only really care when they drop a new single or a new album comes out, like previous generations might have. Like, they're also putting their life in a public display way more than artists were in previous generations. And sometimes I think while it allows listeners to feel more connected to artists, do you think it also puts artists in this place to have this pressure of being on almost all the time, or that you can have one slip up and it's a fall from grace kind of situation?
Yes. Yeah, I think social media it's very public. And obviously these artists have a choice of what they put out on social media when they are in interviews. What they say is it's honestly up to them. Um they have the choice there to keep what's private private, and I think that we need to be able to respect that. And I think that we do. We definitely do respect that, but we want to know who they are as people. We don't want to support someone's music that is if they're a bad person. I don't want to listen to or support an artist if even if their music is incredible, if they are supporting the wrong companies, or if they're just bad people in general. That's not something that we as a generation are interested in. We kind of want the whole package. We're selfish in that way. We want the whole thing.
But I think that that's also in some ways, while it can seem stressful to the people that live their life in a public space, that uh, in some ways the public is becoming critical but also demanding integrity. You could say that listeners want you to be authentic and true to who you are, but also live by your values. And so I see that as such a beautiful kind of, like, it's a fine line and a fine balance, but really interesting. I just always think about if when I was growing up, the artists that I listened to had social media, and obviously a lot of them do. Like, I mostly like binged my life on Britney Spears and NSYNC and Destiny's Child. That was what happened to Beyonce before she was Beyonce on her own, by the way. And for all of our young listeners that did not know that there was a girl group that Beyonce was a part of, those were the things that I always wonder what it would have been like if NSYNC collectively as a group had like an Instagram. When I was growing up, and what that would have been like, because like we just got, what was in the magazines, we got maybe what we could search online in the early days of the internet, and then really just this is when the next NSYNC CD is coming out. And I was like, I got to save my allowance. I got to be at the store early that day. It's going to be mayhem. And then there's people like Britney Spears, who is online and her Instagram is like, God, I've wanted these details about Britney Spears' life my whole entire life, and now I have them, and it's magical. So it's been interesting to grow up from my side of the things with the generation of artists that I followed. But let's talk about less about artists and more about just the listening experience, because we can take that same historical lens about kind of tracing how people have listened to music over time. Like people in the early 20th century had, radio, like those massive units in their living room, and then that turned into records, and it turned into cassettes, and then CDs and MP3s and whatnot. But what is the listening experience like for Generation Z today? Walk me through, if you are engaging in like a really nice deep musical experience, what is that like?
Sure. So I think the two biggest platforms just for listening to music in general with Generation Z are Spotify and Apple Music. Those are the two that definitely come to mind. Especially being a student, I know that I don't know too much about Apple Music because that's not the platform that I use. I use Spotify daily. Sometimes for hours a day. I'm constantly listening to music, and Spotify has this wonderful student discount, and it's great being a student, and we're all we have student debt, so we're not doing too great there. So really, any discount helps, and I think Spotify is also super user friendly, and I've heard that Apple Music is as well. And what's wonderful about both of these platforms is that you can literally listen to anything you ever wanted to listen to, or anything that me as a music student, what I need to listen to for my courses, just learning new French horn solo repertoire. There are a lot of really interesting, uncommon uh, works for French horn that I'm interested in, and some of those aren't even on YouTube. Interestingly enough, but a few famous horn professionals, they'll record albums and then they'll put them on Spotify just to sort of get themselves out there. And so that's been really helpful being a music student. And I think Spotify is also really great. Not only are we able to listen to music on Spotify, but they have podcasts, audiobooks, white noise. So it's really everything you ever wanted to listen to, all just on one very easily accessible platform. And so, yeah, Spotify is what I use. I know a lot of my peers use it as well. And yeah, it's really not too expensive. It's perfect, and anything that you want it's on there.
I too am very pro Spotify, like obsessive about Spotify. And I try to think back to my life before Spotify. And I don't like that. But it's honestly magical. Like before I got on this conversation with you, I was listening to like Elton John's discography. And you think back to like when Elton John emerged as an artist, if you wanted to listen to like more than one of his songs at a time, you was either like you had to buy an album or multiple albums. And it's like now I can listen to all eras of Elton John whenever I feel like it. And that is, I think that that's an elevated music listening experience. But I always laugh because like my parents will still listen to like things on a CD, or they've asked multiple times if I would teach them how to use Spotify, and I do, and they forget it, and it's just like a futile effort. I love them, but we're going to keep them on CDs for a while. And yeah, it's crazy how we are able to take our music and take our listening experience everywhere, and how that, like, in some ways, like I feel like if I'm walking down the street listening to my music, like I'm in a music video, everyone. And the mobile nature of music is, I think, changing and connecting it. But wouldn't you say that some aspect of the mobile nature of Spotify and these streaming platforms is that they're also a little bit social too, because you can share what you're listening to. People can kind of follow even some of your playlists, or you can collaborate on playlists, or I just feel like the shareability of the listening experience is also increased with Spotify.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think?
I would say that it's a very social thing. I'm frequently sharing like what song am I listening to right now, just like on my Instagram story. I want people. I listen to a lot of really interesting music, lots of down tempo music as well as classical music. So I listen to a lot of like James Blake and Still Woozy and Electric Guests and different artists that maybe other people just don't know too much about. They're sort of up and coming, and so I'm always sharing my musical interests on Instagram, for the most part. But it is very social, and especially being a music student, I'm constantly talking about music, thinking about music. There's the classical, more orchestral side of the Jacob School of Music, and we're all very focused on our instrument, but also just as a whole, we all love music so much, whether it be classical music, hip hop, whatever genre you're interested in. There's always just a conversation, a dialogue to be had about music in general and the emotions behind it. And I think that's a really beautiful thing that Spotify gives us the opportunity to share our interests, what we're listening to, and yeah, definitely to create playlists for our different moods. And yeah, Spotify is great. I love Spotify.
I will always pay for Spotify. If you're listening, Spotify, you've got me for life. So, we've kind of touched on what is popular with Gen Z listeners right now. But if we're talking about the Karli Farrell suggestions of artists, who are some of your favorites right now and why? And I'm sure this list could go on forever. So maybe just give us your top three that you're jamming out to.
Sure. Yeah, so like I said, I listen to a lot of down tempo music. It's sort of a new emerging genre. It's really chill music, but still a little bit upbeat. It's something that I personally can really vibe to. So I would say my top three right now are James Blake, Still Woozy, and Electric Guest. And I'm actually going to see Electric Guest live in concert in February up in Chicago. Really excited for that. Yeah, so upbeat, but not too upbeat. Really interesting. Something I could honestly listen to if I was doing anything, walking in between classes or walking to work, coming back home after a long day. Just something that, I could unwind to if I wanted to, or, even to listen to while I'm doing homework. Just something that I could either, really be focused on and listening to, or background music even. Just really vibey music. I'm loving it. Yeah.
I'm going to have to check them out because I've quite literally never heard of them. And that is what I've been told is the turning point when you become old, is when the music of young people, you're no longer at the forefront of the conversation. You are the recipient of understanding what is cool. And so I'm going to go look it up. And everybody, this is the notice to the public. I'm old now. I used to be the person like, have you heard of this new artist? Now I got to learn it from other people. So when you're thinking about your conversations with your peers, both in the music school, outside of the music school, and you think about the artists, and we've kind of talked about like kind of the hip hop genre of artists, but what are the key characteristics that make a group or a group or individual artist popular among Generation Z? If you could distill like the magic sauce of the people that really resonate with Gen Z, what is that like?
Sure. Yeah, I think my conversations with people outside of the music school about what makes a artist popular, why do we as Gen Z like this specific artist so much? It's definitely different whether I'm talking to my business school friends or my music school friends. And I think in just with the general public, what makes them popular is their social media presence, which we touched on a little bit, how relatable they are. Like, for example, Lizzo, she's all about body positivity, love yourself, be yourself, and that's really relatable. And also Billie Eilish, she's so open about her struggles with loving herself and loving her music making and just not having always been sure of herself, and now she's finally, she's getting herself out there. She's very relatable because she shares her struggles, and I think that's a huge theme that Generation Z is working towards, is being able to talk about our different mental health issues and just your regular everyday difficulties. Being able to create a dialogue about that is becoming easier and easier, and having these artists not only create amazing music, but they're also just relatable as people. They're people too, and definitely the ones that share their personal life let us know that they are people too. Those are certainly the people that are the most popular, I think, with Generation Z. People who are relatable, and also if they're activists, what do they do for the benefit of the world? Because they all have this ability to influence so many people with their, the number of followers that they have on Instagram and all of the people listening to their music. What they say is really important because it's reaching so many people. And yeah, I think we're definitely just like I said, we're looking for the whole package. Someone who is making incredible music, relatable music that's fun and interesting, but is also just a good person deep down. That's what we're looking for.
That is wonderful, and it is it's this demand to be a good person is what I love about Gen Z. But before I let you go, this has been super enlightening, and I want to thank you for sharing your insights. And we didn't talk that much about orchestral music, but I'm sure we could. And we're excited to see where your career takes you. I know you've got about a year and a half left in school, and then it's out into that crazy real world. Don't do it; it's a trap. No, it's fun. But before you go, I have one question I ask all my guests. What is your favorite thing about your Gen Z peers?
Wow. We're all very driven and we're all so connected. We're all in this together, definitely fighting for and also against the same things, climate change, student loan debt, the sort of music that we listen to. We're all very connected. I love how connected we are as a generation and how much love and support we have for one another. I think those are definitely a few things that I love about my colleagues, my Generation Z peers, is that we're just very relatable to one another. We're going through the same thing, especially here in college. It's easy to relate to one another and the struggles that we're going through. And we're not afraid to do that. We're not afraid to speak with one another about what's going on, difficulties in classes and life in general, and our worries about the future, because we know that it's impacting all of us and, it will impact us for the rest of our lives together. And yeah, I think just our ability to connect to one another and our willingness to is really important to me. That's one of my favorite things about my colleagues.
I first love that you call them colleagues. Big fan. We're all colleagues in society. And I agree with you. I think that your generation has this unique knack of the ability to be vulnerable and open up conversations in ways that I, in my time on earth, have not seen. And the willingness to do it so publicly and so on your own at such a young age and doing it bravely, I think is a big thing. And you touched on it. The ability to open up and kind of be communal towards one another is really special among this group. And I love just being able to witness you all do that for each other and witness you all growing up and supporting one another. So thank you for being a part of Gen Z. Y'all are great. But a bigger thank you for being here today, Karli. I know you've got a lot of other stuff you could be doing, but sharing your insights on music, the music industry, and what's cool with the kids is always appreciated. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
One of the most amazing things about music is its ability to connect people in the human experience. And for Generation Z, they have their own ways of listening and artists that they love that connect them to one another and those in other generations. I want to thank Karli for spending time chatting about music and giving us a little more insight on what is popular and what matters to Generation Z. And I want to thank you for tuning into this episode and taking a break from your normal playlist or radio station. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. We only have one more episode of season 2, and you certainly don't want to miss it. And your feedback's important to me to improve the show and for others to find the show. Speaking of feedback, I'm already starting to brainstorm and dream about season 3. But this is a podcast that explores the topics and interests of my listeners. So if you know of a member of Generation Z or have a topic you think I need to speak more about, head over to my website, meganmgrace.com, or you can find me on social media to let me know. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thanks again for hanging out. Let's continue this conversation. We'll chat soon.